I owe it all to Billy Squire, a short story by Jason Gillearn. In early 1981, during the spring semester of my final year at Columbia University, I landed a part-time internship. It was the third one of my college career, but unlike the other two, it wasn't in investment banking, so I was actually looking forward to it. On a message board in Van Am Quad, next to ads for off-campus rooms and used textbooks, was a sheet of paper that caught my eye. New music television channel launching soon. Interns wanted, unpaid. I didn't care that I'd be working for free, as I wasn't chasing a paycheck. Truth was, I didn't need one. My father was an extremely successful investment banker in New York City, where we lived on the Upper West Side. I didn't ask my father for much back then, because I barely saw him, but I left a message for his secretary to see if he could make a phone call for me. He did so, and within a week the position was mine. No interview necessary. I didn't feel bad about the access I had because everyone I knew had the same connections, which ironically tended to make some things a bit competitive. Not in this case, however. It was far from Wall Street, so none of my friends would have wanted the internship for that reason, and others. The reason I wanted it is because I was a music freak and had been one since I could remember. My sister, who was 6 years older, introduced me to rock and roll. Her bedroom wall was filled with posters of all the acts she dragged me to. Sometimes she snuck me in. Other times she hit the doorman with more money than she probably needed to in order to ensure I wouldn't miss a handful of seminal bands at a unique place and time. We saw shows in small clubs and huge halls across the city. Patti Smith and Blondie at CBGB. Lou Reed at the Bottom Line. Bruce Springsteen's Darkness on the Edge of Town tour at Madison Square Garden in 1978, and many others. I soaked it all in, and the more I saw, the more I wanted to see. The impact of these shows and the albums I listened to on repeat was immeasurable. As I got older, the clearer it became, I didn't want anything to do with Wall Street and the type of men who inhabit it. I wouldn't have minded the fast-paced, chaotic part, but my love of music made me realize I needed an ample amount of creativity mixed in to be happy and flourish. I also knew who I was. Not a songwriter, not a guitar hero, and not a tortured artist writing lyrics into a notebook. But I could be the fan, the observer, the one who lived for the beauty without the pain, and I felt lucky there was a career. Moreover, a life which would enable me to live adjacent to it just the same. Even though I didn't know the exact path, I had that clarity early to guide me. I had no idea what the position entailed before accepting it, but I quickly found out this was the case for much of the staff, a large percentage of whom were complete novices. We were all flying blind for a while. All I knew was it had something to do with music, and that's why I jumped at the chance to work at the yet-to-be-named MTV. I was the youngest person there, but not by much. Everyone was young and willing to take a chance. Our team was made up of interns, producers, production designers, camera operators, editors, broadcast engineers, the suits, and of course the VJs, who were the last ones hired. I graduated that summer and they offered me a full-time position. A few of the higher-ups, including the one who knew my father, were surprised when I took it. I became an assistant to the line producer. I went from making nothing to next to nothing and couldn't have been happier. We were overstretched early on, but too naive to know it, which added to our carefree attitude. What kept us going in the months before the launch was a sense that we were all part of something with potential, even if we couldn't see the shape of it. We were one happy, dysfunctional family who had a shared sense of fumbling towards something bigger. It made us close in a way I haven't experienced since, and many of the employees in those early days who've gone on to do some amazing things in the media space feel the exact same way. We hung together in the studio, at the regular bar on the corner, and on the many ventures MTV sent us throughout the country. I often pine for those fun times in that shitty studio on 10th Avenue and West 33rd Street, a rough part of Manhattan back then. Our journey officially started the night of the big launch in August of 1981. We took buses out to a bar in New Jersey because Manhattan, like many big cities in America, didn't have MTV yet. The nervous anticipation was somewhat subdued by the immense amount of booze that was consumed that night, but the alcohol also made us emotional. At the stroke of midnight, when John Lack, one of MTV's creators, said, "Ladies and gentlemen, rock and roll," and the now famous theme song started playing, we screamed, laughed, hugged, and cried. then kept drinking heavily as we sang along to Video Killed the Radio Star by the Buggles. We didn't know we were witnessing the birth of a cultural juggernaut, but we knew some kind of magic was happening nonetheless. Another memorable night occurred just a few months after the launch. Billy Squire came into the studio and sang, "Christmas is the time to say I love you." We danced and sang along to Billy's underrated Christmas classic. Everything was perfect on that cold December night. The music video generated from it perfectly illustrated the love we had for one another. It also further entrenched my belief in what we were doing together both personally and professionally. Martha Quinn, still a good friend to this day, has spoken many times how this was her favorite MTV memory. It was an executive's idea to have Billy come in that night, just one of the many great suggestions the suits made along the way. In fact, all of our hard work would have been for naught if it wasn't for those executives pulling the right strings, even though they were also doing some guesswork too. Navigating a new 24-hour cable television channel was uncharted territory for everyone involved, including the artists, many who were squarely against even making a video. Only a few even knew what one was. Some of the moves made by those executives early on impressed me as much as the rock stars who graced the MTV screens for the 3 years I worked there and beyond. Ultimately, it took a team effort between the suits and artists to save the network when it was hemorrhaging millions of dollars and financially on the brink. The first several years of the channel weren't profitable. MTV had trouble convincing cable operators to take a chance on a new youth-oriented music channel, so it couldn't provide advertisers with the large audience they desired. This resulted in weak revenue, the death knell for any struggling cable network. Also, cable companies thought community standards would be violated because of the wild rock and roll content. But even if the content was pure, there was hardly any of it. Most bands didn't have any videos, so it was slim pickings in those days. We were forced to play subpar videos and repeat them ad nauseum. How many times could someone watch Blotto's "I Want to Be a Lifeguard"? I hated that fucking song. The network bosses hired VJs to introduce bands like Blotto to the world. Another one of their astute judgments. Nina Blackwood, Mark Goodman, Alan Hunter, Martha Quinn, and J.J. Jackson weren't polished broadcasters, but they felt accessible to millions of American kids, including us interns. I did my first line of coke with Mark Goodman and Alan Hunter, and certainly not my last. But luckily, unlike my father, I could take it or leave it. The team launched the "I Want My MTV" campaign. The now legendary slogan was taken from a late 1950s advertising campaign for a brand of maple-flavored oatmeal called Mapo, in which kids screamed, "I want my Mapo." Given the similarity, stolen is probably a better word for it, but this still didn't guarantee success. It was an 11th-hour gamble that turned out to be a stroke of genius. They somehow recruited reluctant rock stars to look into a camera and tell people to demand a channel most had never heard of. That channel would soon be playing videos that many of them would be making, whether they liked it or not, and most did not. Starting in the spring of '82, the campaign triggered a wave of viewer pressure on reluctant cable operators. Kids flooded switchboards, so they had no choice but to add MTV to their lineups. This masterstroke was just one of the savvy moves that led MTV to become profitable in 1984, which made it the first basic cable station in the history of television to do so. I found these tactical moves as impressive as the artists and industry that benefited from them. I always looked at the executives and thought, I could do that. And after seeing the incredible life they had, I thought, I want to do that. The top executives became friends with rock stars. They ended up drinking and drugging with them and had multiple girlfriends as well. But unlike the musicians, they were somehow able to party all night and still make an early meeting the next day like nothing happened. Most of us at the channel built a similar tolerance. It was lots of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, albeit in a corporate environment. MTV taught me how to work hard and play hard. I certainly had the genes to do so. I saw my father do that for my entire childhood, before ultimately losing his family and most of our fortune. I desired one day to find the balance that most of the executives were somehow able to maintain. I also craved the challenge of turning something upside down and making a success out of it, purely based on the decisions I made. I ultimately got an opportunity which would put me in the pipeline to do this, albeit in a strange way. This is why I left MTV in the fall of 1984, a paradigm-shifting year for many reasons. MTV was in a much better position in '84 than it was when I started. What had started as a scrappy experiment had crystallized and transformed an entire industry. That year marked the moment the channel became the center of pop culture, with the likes of Michael Jackson, Prince, Van Halen, Bruce Springsteen, and Madonna all selling millions more albums than they would have if not for our growing cable channel. But while 1984 was the year that saw many careers skyrocket, it had different plans for some. In early '84, Billy Squire was on a roll, coming off 2 successful albums and sold-out tours. Anticipation was riding high for his third album. The lead single, Rock Me Tonight, was already dominating rock radio, setting the perfect stage for what many expected to be a defining moment. The world premiere of its music video. Everything seemed set up for Squire to make an even bigger leap into rock superstardom. But I wasn't so sure this was going to happen for 2 reasons. First, because as great as Billy was, and I was a huge fan, he still wasn't Michael Jackson or Madonna. And secondly, because I was a witness to the disastrous video shoot for Rock Me Tonight. Billy was a frequent visitor to the MTV studio in the early days, so I got to know him personally. He was kind enough to invite me to Los Angeles to watch the video being filmed. Ultimately, he wished nobody had seen it. It was a video which impacted the rest of his career, and mine. As I sat on the side of the soundstage, I knew right away this was going to be nothing like his previous videos, In the Dark and The Stroke. As history would prove, it would be nothing like anyone's videos at the time. I shockingly watched Billy roll around in satin sheets and then prance around in a pink shirt. I just hoped they had a really good editor, because they were going to need one. I overheard Billy's manager asking the director to make sure he shot the band playing so they could cut away in the edit. Billy's manager obviously felt the same way I did. I don't see how anybody could have seen it any other way, but I was fairly certain it wouldn't matter either way, because if they weren't able to get the edit they wanted, they would just scrap it altogether. Then they could replace it with a video without Billy or the band. Bruce Springsteen did that for his Atlantic City video. It was an artistic choice that didn't blow anyone away, but certainly didn't destroy his career either. But it would have always been more difficult to come up with something artsy for a song called Rock Me Tonight. Because of delays in landing a director for the video, it was shot only a few weeks before the world premiere on MTV. Additionally, post-production took longer than expected. But the video was finally delivered to Billy, his managers, and the record company a few days before the premiere. Apparently, most of the viewers had the same initial reaction to the video as I did in Los Angeles, because an emergency meeting was set up by the label. Sal Sterling, senior VP of MTV, took me out to lunch that day. He asked me if I wouldn't mind going to a meeting with him. He said it would be good for me to see how the assholes at the label operated. Of course, I jumped at the opportunity. On the way to the meeting, the only thing Sal told me was that it was about the new Billy Squire video, but he didn't know any specifics. I knew right away he hadn't already seen the video like some of the staff at MTV did. So unlike my boss, I had a pretty good idea what was about to go down at the meeting. I was proved to be correct when we walked in the boardroom. One would have thought someone had gotten shot. Billy's team was there, as were all the executives at Capitol, even those who didn't work with Billy. Water was offered, some pleasantries were had, and after some other small talk bullshit, they got to the point because the video was set to premiere the next day. The lights dimmed in the room and everyone's attention turned to the assistant who rolled in a video cart. Most of us know why we're here, but let's get a refresher, said Maz Jammer, president of Capitol. A bulky TV sat on top of the cart. The assistant hit play and the pause screen started. Right away we saw Billy lying in a bed with no shirt on, writhing around in pastel-colored sheets. As the room filled with the opening bars of Rock Me Tonight, Billy put on a shirt and started dancing, even though it looked more like he was battling cerebral palsy, which would have been less embarrassing. After about 30 seconds of spasmodic movements, he ripped off the shirt he had just put on. Billy clearly saw the movie Flashdance way too many times. Some of the executives recoiled, even after already seeing it. I witnessed the debacle only 2 weeks before, but for some reason, it was even worse this time. But surprisingly, not everyone felt this way. I love the boldness of it, said Gina, VP of Promotions. The public is eating up anything flashy right now. I think it'll stand out. There's no doubt about that, replied a higher up at Capitol who was clearly riding the fence. Not that I was about to give my opinion either. But unlike both of us, at least Billy had balls. In fact, you could see them through his skimpy pants, which didn't help either. What's wrong with being expressive? Gina countered. Nothing if you're Liberace, Sal Sterling quipped. Sal thought the video was hilarious, still wondering why we were even there. The head of the label looked at Billy's managers and asked, I'm surprised Billy doesn't have a problem with it. Billy's manager said, he's not exactly happy with it. It's not the look he was going for and was initially horrified, but he can live with it. He's aware of how big the budget was, even though it doesn't fucking look like it. Maz said, it's the most we've spent on a video to date, and there's no more money coming. Stu from Promotion said, I don't see a problem with it. I wouldn't hire that choreographer again, though. There was no choreographer. Billy was the choreographer, said Billy's other manager. Sal Sterling replied, just make sure he doesn't dance in his next fucking video. If he even gets to make one, I said just as the room went silent. I couldn't believe I blurted that out. But did I? I wasn't sure because I kind of dissociated at that moment, but I must have because everyone in the room immediately turned toward me. I often talk to myself, but apparently sometimes I'm unmuted when I do. In this instance, at the worst time possible. And even though I wished to God at that moment I could take it back, at least it's how I truly felt. That train wreck I witnessed on the soundstage had clearly stuck in my subconscious mind. I had told no one about it, or what I thought about it for that matter, but apparently it needed to get out. Either way it happened. It was out of character for me, and clearly not a good look for an underling to make a crack like that, let alone say anything at all in that environment. And at that moment it felt like an even worse decision than skipping around in a fucking pink shirt. I didn't know a lot, but I knew enough to only speak when you're spoken to. And of course, that's what happened next. What did you just say? The head of the label asked inquisitively. Caught off guard, I said, nothing, I'm sorry. Then Sal said, he said, if he even gets to make another one. Then he started laughing. Kid makes a good point, he continued. Then Maz said, tell me more. You're the target demographic. So maybe we should have asked you in the first fucking place. What do you think about the video? I paused for a second to gather my thoughts. That slight dissociation didn't remove the small buzz I still had from the 2 tequila shots at lunch with the boss, who had 4. After that brief pause, I said, well, I really like his other music videos. That clearly wasn't the information he wanted or needed, and I didn't want to waste any more of their time. So when Maz said, what about this video? That's why we're fucking here. I looked around the room and every eyeball was focused on me. Then I said, well, it's... Sal said, tell him what's up, kid. After another brief pause, I said, that's the gayest fucking shit I've ever seen. A cavernous silence now, even more quiet than before. The words hung in the air for several moments and half stunned the people in the room. Then Maz said, well, yeah, no shit. He's prancing around like fucking Peter Pan. Will you buy the new record? I half chuckled, then quickly composed myself. I know Billy, so his managers were nice enough to get me an advance copy of the record, and I love it, I said. Maz replied, if you didn't already have it, would you go to a record store and buy it after seeing the video? After a quick beat, I said, maybe with a mask on. That got a laugh in the room. Then Maz continued, would you pay for a ticket to watch him play live? These are difficult questions for me to answer because I like Billy a lot, I replied. What if you didn't know him? Let's say you're just some asshole off the street who liked the song and saw the video. Would you pay for a ticket to see him live? I wouldn't even go for free, I said. This got another laugh, but a smaller one, because there was genuine concern now. But the laughs were cut short when one of the top A&R executives, who hadn't said anything until that point, asked pointedly, who are you? And not in a nice way. I introduced myself and then he asked me what my position was at MTV. This is the best assistant to the line producer we have at the network, Sal proudly said. I wasn't an assistant any longer by that point. I had been promoted several times by then, but I didn't want to embarrass Sal in front of anyone in the room, so I kept my mouth shut, learning a lesson from just a few minutes before. The same executive, Rick Pongman, pounced on this. Are we really going to listen to anything an assistant has to say? Rick said. Oh, don't be such a fucking asshole, Rick, Maz exclaimed. Sal smiled and said, yeah, don't be such a fucking asshole, Rick. Sal told me later he and Rick had known each other for a long time and weren't the biggest fans of one another. The head of the label asked both of Billy's managers what they thought. They both agreed that it wasn't the best look for Billy and asked about the possibility of completely pulling the video. Rick wasn't done. Pulling the video? That's fucking insane. It's 1984. We need visual support for this single and the album. We're leaving millions on the table if we don't push this. Jesus Christ, it's just a fucking video, he screamed. After a second, Maz replied, I'm not so sure. I think I'd like to hold off, Sal. It's obviously your call, Sal responded. I'll talk to my boss, Ross Wolf, later to get MTV's official response and see what the options are. It debuts tomorrow night, so that gives us a little more time to think about it, Maz said. Sal said, yeah, it premieres tomorrow night, but we tape for broadcast a day or two before. Shit, said Maz. Sal looked at me and asked, have you guys shot the intro for the world premiere yet? We're a bit behind, so we should be shooting it. I quickly looked at my watch. Probably right now, I said. Sal said, once it's in the can, it's difficult to change because everything after it is affected. Are you sure you want to do this, Maz? Maz looked at Billy's managers and asked, do you think Billy would mind if we rethink this? We still have the video, but maybe we just hold off a bit, at least until we talk about it more with Billy when he's back from vacation. I'll talk to Wolf about it in the meantime. Both of Billy's managers looked relieved and agreed it wasn't a bad idea to make a more measured decision, especially if the world premiere could be pushed back. Neither one of them liked the video or the director who shot it. All good, one of them said. I'll reach out to Billy and let him know. It won't be a problem. Sal said, then we better get the hell out of here and try to put a stop to this thing. Once it's in the pipeline, it will be a much bigger issue. Let's just hope they haven't shot it. Thank you for coming, gentlemen, Maz said. We quickly said our goodbyes and exited the building. Sal told me in the elevator he had another meeting to go to. Before he hopped in a cab to his other meeting, he was clearly going home, he recommended that I try to rush back to the studio to do what I could to stop the production. But he told me I shouldn't worry if I didn't make it back in time. He didn't give a fuck about their situation. It wasn't a problem for us because MTV was sitting pretty with the video or without it. Sal said, if this was a few years ago when we were kissing the label's asses for content, I'd be running back there myself. But the power dynamics have shifted and now they can suck it. We have better videos with bigger artists who can actually fucking dance. He wished me the best of luck as the cab drove away. There was another reason I wanted to be an executive. You could just delegate shit and bail. I tried to hail a cab right after Sal, but none came, so I had to wait and wait. I knew time was of the essence. Even if Sal made it clear it wasn't a big deal, but it definitely was a big deal with massive ramifications. Apparently, I was the only one in the room who knew this for sure. Everyone else was guessing, but I knew if this hit the airwaves, he was cooked. And even though I didn't feel like running through Manhattan after a tequila-fueled lunch, I figured I would try for Billy's sake. I started with a light jog up West 57th Street. The city was humming and smelling worse than ever. Maybe it was the deep breaths I was forced to take. Only seconds into my 1.5-mile jaunt, I started questioning my idea of being a hero, especially since I was wearing penny loafers. By the time I reached 10th Avenue, a rogue flock of pigeons flew effortlessly by me and then skyward. They would have surely made it in time, probably unlike me. I would have thought the pigeons were a sign from the heavens if several of them didn't barrel into me. So maybe it was a sign telling me to forget it. A passing cyclist witnessed the pigeon assault and laughed as he raced past me. I felt like I would have had a chance on that guy's bike, but running another 20 minutes started to feel like an exercise in futility. But I kept going. About halfway down toward the 30s, the sidewalk became an obstacle course. I ran by construction workers, wandering tourists, and some dog, who I normally would have stopped to pet, that chased me an entire block. My internal dialogue oscillated between, why the fuck am I doing this, to singing Rock Me Tonight, which was a gentle reminder to pick up the pace. I got my second win and ran one red light after another. By the time 10th Avenue and 33rd Street finally came into view, I had sweated out that tequila. I slowed but didn't stop because every second counted. I continued into the studio just as a smiling Martha Quinn was announcing, "Okay, here it is. The world premiere of Billy Squire's Rock Me Tonight." "Cut," I yelled, still catching my breath. I clearly startled her and the cameraman. Neither of them knew who screamed that directive until they looked up and saw me. "It wasn't that bad," Martha said, still smiling. "No, it was great as always," I replied, smiling back at her. I went on to explain the situation, after explaining why I was dripping with sweat. I didn't have to go into too much detail. Martha and the cameraman were some of the workers at MTV who had seen the video when it was delivered a few days before, and they all thought the same thing. What the fuck was he thinking? Either way, I somehow made it. My job that day was done, even though it wasn't a job I asked for, was getting paid for, or would benefit from. At least that's what I thought initially. So then it was in the hands of the executives. It was the job of the president of Capitol Records and the president and CEO of MTV Networks to have a simple discussion about a rock music video. Not about educational access, trade disputes, human rights, global food insecurity, terrorism, or world peace. Just a music video. But somehow ego got involved. Executives often feel pressure to appear strong rather than weak. Most have huge egos, which only increase with success. Those successes reinforce self-belief and inflate their sense of importance. I saw this firsthand during my time at the network and also with the executives at my father's IB firm. It's a slippery slope that I vowed to avoid in the future. Since my early days at the network, I had longed to be in the position where I could make decisions about music and artists and help them in any way I could. It would be a way of thanking them for sharing their art with the world. Of course, hard decisions have to be made, which aren't always popular, but some decisions could be made easily, free of ego, and truly beneficial for all involved. I learned that with the Rock Me Tonight video. After a phone conversation between Maz and Ross Wolf, it was decided the video would go on as planned. Ross told Maz that if they pushed back the video, MTV couldn't guarantee a world premiere, even though he definitely could have. Ego had reared its ugly head once again. Maz wanted the world premiere label, even though it wouldn't have mattered one bit since the video would be subsequently played in heavy rotation either way. So inevitably, Maz took the "it's just a fucking video" advice. The next day, only a few hours before the premiere, Martha uttered those same words, but delivered them even better this time. It was fast-tracked to the head of the production line, and the video for Rock Me Tonight debuted at midnight as planned. The response was instantaneous and brutal. Some viewers even began calling MTV to complain about the feminine nature of the video. A man wearing a pink shirt at that time was blasphemous. In 1984, many gay icons like Elton John, Boy George, Michael Stipe, and George Michael were still years away from coming out. Even Freddie Mercury never officially came out. The video damaged Billy's rock image so much that many rock radio DJs mocked the video on air. Some programmers instantly soured on the track. They pulled it from heavy rotation in response to the backlash, and their reluctance to push the single hurt its chart performance. Worst of all, as I predicted in the meeting, it alienated Squire's fan base so much that the fallout lingered into his next album, Enough Is Enough. He never recovered and ultimately left the music industry altogether. But Billy himself was not immune from culpability. Billy felt a need to get bigger, even though he had a great career already that was only growing before its rapid contraction. His two previous albums, Don't Say No in 1981 and Emotions in Motion in 1982, went multi-platinum. He was selling out arenas and was already huge on MTV. He had probably never ripped off his shirt or rolled around in satin sheets before that day. So why did he do it for the first time on video? There's only one answer. Even though Billy went away, the video did not. Many rank it as the worst video ever made, and it stands as a cautionary tale about rock stars and their image. But for me, the cautionary tale is solely about ego and how it can destroy. Several months after the video premiered on that fateful day in August of 1984, and well into the financial hit taken by Billy and his record label, I left MTV. I was hired at Capitol Records in the Artist Relations Department, replacing Rick Pongman, who was fired. While there, even though I didn't work with Billy directly, I tried to the best of my ability to repair some of the damage done to Billy's career and get it back on track, well aware that he gave me my own career, albeit in a cruel twist of fate manner. I was lucky enough to work with many artists over the next several decades at Capitol, a few of those being the same musicians I saw years ago as a teenager in the clubs of NYC. In my 30-plus years at Capitol, ultimately becoming president of the label, I made the decision not to let my ego get involved in any of the decisions that had to be made, always trying my best to keep it about the art. That certainly got more difficult as I found myself in the rarefied air of deal-making. Plus, the music business changed to something almost unrecognizable to that of what it was when I started. Ironically, MTV became a casualty in its own right. I certainly made mistakes along the way, but I had a satisfying career, and there are many things I'm grateful for, especially the ability to get my sister tickets to any show she's ever wanted to see, even though I could never fully repay her for what she did for me. I'm still in touch with Billy. I don't see him as much as I would like because I live on the West Coast and he lives on Central Park West, not too far away from my childhood home. Even though he's done extremely well for himself financially and wants for nothing, I still send him a holiday gift every year because, as I have reminded him for decades, I owe it all to Billy Squire.